Hello and welcome to this brief presentation on iPOS-Excel for Infor SunSystems. iPOS-Excel is a solution that has been designed and developed by Professional Advantage. Professional Advantage are also the designers and authors of the iPOS e-procurement module. iPOS-Excel is an extension tool that can be deployed alongside iPOS to allow for an extended set of upload and export functionality where users require this within their iPOS environment. The Excel add-in for iPOS allows the users to extract data directly from the iPOS environment into a spreadsheet, which is great for reporting, and this can include any transactional data, so requisitions, orders, invoices, all goods receipts, and once extracted, the user can then take that spreadsheet and do as they wish for their reporting structure. The system also allows for upload of requisitions and invoices directly from a spreadsheet into the iPOS environment with all the correct validation and controls that are needed, while also populating transactional data with the correct fields where there may be defaulting of data within the iPOS environment. So for example, where maybe a requisition uses a certain item, if there is a linked supplier, that could be populated into the spreadsheet for you by the iPOS-Excel functionality. The iPOS system is designed to work with all versions of SunSystems, and as an add-on module for iPOS, iPOS-Excel is compliant with the corresponding correct version of iPOS Core and Infor SunSystems. It is a complementary module, and user identification, security framework, etc. within the iPOS environment is reflected into the iPOS-Excel environment. This means that users are validating in the Excel environment as if they were iPOS users, and all the correct security controls are applied. The add-in allows for requisitions and invoices, and requisitions can be imported using a line process or a header and line. Invoices require both headers and lines. The extraction functionality is very easy and allows you to choose different fields and bring them out into your spreadsheet, similar to if you were using the older Q&A iPOS add-in. The system makes bulk transactions easy, it permits entering and validation, and of course, it's able to manage calculations and checks around data that you're exporting. The system is familiar to use and of course allows you to work within the Excel environment. If we look at the benefits of iPOS-Excel, it could be that it would save you costs by improving the accuracy and speed of entry for very large invoices. That could potentially be relevant to where you're using perhaps a utility bill and need to be uploading that into the system. Where that's entered into the iPOS environment manually, that could take a long time. It's obviously compliant with purchasing policies, and it applies all of the validation rules that you would typically find in iPOS. From a people and cultural perspective, iPOS-Excel means that you could potentially extend iPOS functionality out to users who are not typically within iPOS itself. You have some people who need to upload invoices, for example. That could be done through only the Excel environment, while not accessing the iPOS core. I'm going to give you a brief run through of the iPOS-Excel functionality and look at all of these areas in a little bit more detail. In order to use iPOS-Excel, the add-in needs to be included in your Excel environment, and this is done through a simple installation process, which will then give you an extra toolbar at the top of your Excel screen, similar to using Q&A for Infor SunSystems or maybe the PA Importer if you've been using that in the past. As you can see here within my Excel, I have a Professional Advantage bar, and underneath this we have various functionalities associated to iPOS-Excel. You do need to log into the solution, so we can click the login screen, and I'm just going to log in as the iPOS admin user. Security, as I mentioned before, is linked to your iPOS user group, and this means that all actions, validations, etc. are controlled by your iPOS security. Once we're logged into the solution, you'll see that we have a number of buttons that we can use. The first one is for managing templates, and this is the area designed to work for import of data into iPOS. Manage export profiles allows us to work with extracting data into the Excel spreadsheet. And then over here, we have a number of options for whether or not we're going to be creating or submitting our transactions. So we do have variability there. It could be that you want a transaction in the Excel environment to just be created in iPOS, where it could then be submitted and sent for approval. Or you could actually create and submit, or indeed update something you've already sent in and is sitting at a created status. The formula option allows us to build out formulas and validation within the spreadsheet. First of all, we're going to have a look at importing a requisition into the iPOS environment. You can see here that I've created a couple of different sheets just for clarity, and I'm in the requisition import sheet. At the top here, I've defined some information that we're going to need as part of our import. AP1 is my business unit, demo is my import template that I'm using for requisitions, and I've decided to limit the import in this particular sheet to 2 rows. You'll see how this works as we go into our template area. So we have a look at Manage Templates. This opens a sidebar, and in here we build out whatever templates we need for our import. You can see that we can create new templates and give them a name. We also have the ability to save or delete existing templates. We have a look at category. Categories that are available are requisition header, requisition line, invoice header, and invoice line. For requisitions, we could define a template that just directly moves to import requisition lines. We don't necessarily need to populate requisition header detail from the spreadsheet. This can be defaulted from within the iPOS environment. However, we could also have a sheet that imports data into the requisition header and brings in requisite lines. Differently, for invoices, you do require to import both a header and the line detail because there is important information on the header of an invoice, such as the invoice number, etc. We're going to work with requisitions in this particular area. So we have a look at our requisition line template category. You can see here we have all the variable fields from a requisition line in iPOS that we may potentially wish to import. So essential information, you can see I've already moved into the selected column area. Things like item codes, descriptions, supply code, quantity, unit cost, total. These are very common pieces of information that you'll be entering into a requisition. But we could also bring in more detailed information. So if we wanted to populate our analysis dimensions here, our T codes, things like project codes, department codes, schemes, cost centers, that sort of thing, we could bring them across into the right-hand side. We can do multi-currency. We can bring in various notes and justifications, additional fields if you're using those within your iPOS environment, and other information that's relevant. So for the purposes of this, I've actually created a template within here called Demo, and this is a requisition line template, and I'm bringing in just some basic information into our sheet, so the item code, description, etc. So this is my template for requisition lines that I'm going to import from my spreadsheet. If we were to be importing invoices, we have a look at the invoice header. You can see that this is information that sits on the invoice header, the all-important supplier invoice number, the total invoice amount, that sort of thing. And then below that, in the invoice lines, we actually have invoice line detail that we could be bringing in. So we're going to stick initially to using our demo template to bring in requisition lines. So I'm just going to close this at this stage. I can choose my sheet where I want to build out a template for import. And the first thing we do is we go up here to our formulas area. Under formulas, we have the ability to build out formulas for requisition headers, requisition lines, invoice headers and lines, and then also for extraction of various pieces of core information. So if I wanted an item code list or I wanted an analysis category code list, supply list, I can also bring that data out into my sheet as well. So in this case, I'm going to say, let's look at requisition lines, and then we build out some information. So we do need the business unit that we're going to upload that into iPOS for. We also have the template code. So what is it we're bringing up? Is it our lines, our headers, etc.? So in this case, it will be demo, that template I've built. The number of lines we're going to import. So the sheet will look through X number of rows when we run the process. And also whether or not this is going to be a linked requisition. So a linked requisition is a piece of information on the header of a requisition. And if we make a linked requisition, it means that all parts, all lines need to actually be approved for all of them to go forward. So we can link requisitions together, things like a laptop and a laptop case. One without the other would not be good. So that's core iPOS functionality just reflected into our template. So I could actually just go through and enter these into the bar, but I've actually changed this slightly so that just to make it easier, I've set that up in my spreadsheet. So I'm going to choose my business unit as AP1. My template code I'm using is demo, the one we looked at before. Number of lines is 2, just to make sure that we're only bringing in a few lines, not looking through a massive great sheet for no reason. And then my linked requisition is no in this case. So once I've done that, I can say OK, and what we'll see is some magic where the system will go off and bring through data from iPOS and define some fields for us. So it knows all of those fields defined in our template, and these are what we're going to be filling in and populating in the screen. So it's populated a column for each of those fields. Now, at the moment, there's no information in there. What I can do is type in my item codes, for example. So if I wanted to choose from my standard item list in iPOS, there is validation around that. So if I type in here a code that may not exist, for example, as my item code, what we see is not much happens there. It doesn't populate description or supply code or anything like this. Over here, some information has appeared, and this is because it's linked to my user. So it knows the date, it knows the delivery address because that's my default in iPOS for this user. And it's also got a set of standard analysis that's associated to my user. So this is core, it just comes through not related to the item, but the item itself hasn't populated anything. However, if I put in a valid item code in iPOS, which would be 4000, when I click off this, we actually would get some validation. So you can see the system is going off into the iPOS environment and dragging back information from the item. So we know it's appliance servicing, we know the supplier code, quantity default of 1, purchase account, etc. So this helps us to get accurate data into our spreadsheets. If we enter something that's not understood by iPOS or wouldn't be understood by iPOS when we go for a submission, that would not work for us in the spreadsheet. And this is where the validation and the integration comes into play. Here, I could put in a second line, and potentially I could go 4000 as well, just to add in some extra data there. But it is only 2 lines. I've defined it to look for 2 lines. If I extended that, it would then look for more lines. This is just to ensure good performance based on the number of rows that potentially appear in a spreadsheet. Now I can fill in other things like unit cost. In this case, it hasn't populated unit cost because I haven't set that for the supplier in iPOS. But if I had actually set a unit cost for the supplier, maybe it's the default supplier, that would have been worked out for us and would have been populated there. So as I say, these fields are purely based on whatever you've got in your template. So if we needed more fields, we wanted to enter more information, we could. Once I've done this, what I can do is save this as a template, keep it somewhere, and then come in and change only certain things I want to change at any one time, and then use it again and again. So this really does speed up entry for large, very, very large number of line requisitions or indeed invoices. So I've now got a requisition, nicely formed, well validated, ready to go. I know it should work because the data is validated. It's populated things like my tax code defaulting from the item, that sort of thing. And I'm ready to go. So my options at this stage are to create this in iPOS, i.e. it's just a created requisition, it's not going to be submitted. I could actually submit it directly. So when I upload it, it would then submit it as well, and it would go on for approval. So in this case, I'm just going to go create. So it will go and touch iPOS, come back, requisition created, and I'm done. So that immediately is within my iPOS environment, and I haven't had to go into iPOS at all as a user. So if we then look at the capability to maybe extract some data from iPOS for reference purposes here, I may extend on that slightly and go and have a look at the extraction of perhaps a supplier list. So if I go iPOS supplier, choose my business unit, which is AP1 here, I can dump a list of suppliers from iPOS. Very basic information, but it's useful to you perhaps in building out your templates, and that can be updated at any time by just extracting. We also have the ability here, if you wish to extract things like your analysis codes or your business units or your item codes. So if I say item codes, again, choose my business unit, now I get my item code list. So as well as being able to extract transactional information from iPOS, which I'll show you in a second, we can also extract basic core data lists, which you may want to build into your spreadsheet, maybe have lookups and things like this that could help you. However, if you do use any of this data to actually drive an upload, that potentially is going to be validated against iPOS anyway. So if you know your codes, you can try your luck and it will make sure that you don't make any mistakes. So we're now going to move on to an invoice import. Different area, but exactly the same principle. However, in this case, we do need to have a header and a line. So we have a look at manage templates again. I've actually got some invoice header template set up. So INV HDR, we're just going to bring in supplier code, address, basic information on the header. And then we got a invoice line environment here, which brings in basic invoice line details, and that's IMV line. So I'm going to close that. Here, if I go to my formulas again, I'm going to go invoice header, remembering we need to have a header for iPOS-Excel in an invoice. I'm going to choose my business unit. And here we have our temporary code, and that's going to be IMV header for the header, and I've again populated it into the sheet here. So when I go OK, we now get a row for our header information, which we've decided is important when we're going to bring data into the system. I'll just extend those slightly so you can see the column headers a little bit more. And then below that, I'm going to have my invoice lines. So I can go again to formulas, invoice lines, and this time business unit AP1 again. Temporary code in this template code is IMV line, which is my line definition, and then the number of lines is going to be 2. So this then brings the line detail. So imagine this could be one invoice, and I can lay these out any way I like, but the point is here it will be the header information, then any number of lines. I could have a second one here. It's entirely up to you, and it would upload multiples at once if you have multiples set up in the one sheet. So my supplier code, I could actually have a drop-down list or a lookup. So in this case here, I'm actually going to use my formula list and go iPOS suppliers, business unit AP1. And you can see I've got a number of suppliers. So maybe I'll use something pretty common. So 8102 or 8101. So here I'll put in 8101. That's populated the address code from SunSystems. The date could be anything. It could be today, tomorrow, whatever you wish to use. And if you don't populate the date, then it potentially would just use today during the import. The invoice amount could be £120. Our invoice number could be anything I like. Obviously, it does do a duplicate check in the same way as it would within iPOS. And I've got an extra field there, so I'll just put a comment or something in that I wish to use. So, me, Mr. C. Comment. And then in my line, again, I'm going to just use an item code I know, 4,000 potentially, populate some data. My unit cost in this case will be 100, quantity 1. So if I have multiple lines here, obviously based on tax, etc., it would need to ensure that the lines add up to the amount. So I have in this case one line with the tax component. Standard tax has been calculated and it knows it's 120. So I brought that through. I could have extra lines, columns here to show things like the tax value, etc., if I wanted. So I've now got my invoice, and again, I can create, submit, or push it up. So I can go create. It's creating line, invoice created, and it's created one line. So a very, very simple process to use, very intuitive. Users can pick this up very, very quickly once you've got it set it up. And obviously, if you set up some templates for users, then they can be available for anybody as well. So that's our upload. The final area of iPOS-Excel, it's a new area. So people who've already been using iPOS-Excel, this hasn't been there in the past, is the ability to extract transactional information from your iPOS environment. Historically, users may have been using the Q&A data link for iPOS, where you can extract transactional information into the Q&A environment. Due to Q&A 11 and some changes coming in there with the ability to use data links, that's no longer going to be something that's really supportable going forward. So what we've done is we've actually introduced similar functionality into the iPOS-Excel environment to give you a better experience as well. So you can do your uploads and your extractions in the same environment with one module rather than two. So to run the extraction function, you would go to the Manage Export Profiles. This is a similar area to the import templates. And within here, we can build out as many different templates as we like for extraction of data types. So you can see here, I've got a template called PK1 test. That was something I've already set up. It's got a name. It has a defined business unit, and we can choose from a drop down of any business units that we have within the system. And then we decide what data type we're going to extract. So here we have requisition items, but it could be requisition headers, it could be orders, order items, receipts, invoices, etc. within the system. And once we have that, we can then decide a filter. So we've got submitted date as a filter for requisition headers, but it could just as easily be something else if we wanted to. And here we have a list of all the available columns to extract and those that we've selected to extract. So I could bring out everything if I wanted to from the requisition header. But the data set is complete. It's all fields within a requisition, and some of these have subsets to them as well. So around this data, we have header approval information. So we could go in and look at header approval, level 1, level 2, level 3, etc. Maybe around distribution code on the header. Distribution obviously contains analysis, so we can have a look at the analysis, etc. So very simple to link out and choose what information you're going to bring across. Once we've saved our template, fit in a filter, we can save it to use it again. However, in this case, I'm just going to choose the top row here, and I'm going to export. And that will now bring out requisition header information. And you can see it's very much a listing of fields. So you can now do whatever you want with this. And any of the fields you selected, obviously, would be there and populated if needed. What I'm going to do is just change this profile to choose to bring out requisition items. I may just remove that data and run the export on items. I'll bring out all the line detail. Again, we've got a date submitted filter that allows us to make some changes there if needed. And it could be that I also want some item information that isn't there, item description, maybe in the amounts. I'd like to bring out my base amount, my quantity, tax amount, unit to measure, conversion code. Moving down again, maybe I want the approver of the line. Perhaps I want some supplier information, supplier code, distribution code, etc. So anyway, make my choices, extract, and now I've got requisition line data instead of order data. So very simple to extract, very simple to use, and we can save this as often as we like. So invoices will be just the same. So invoices, let's bring all of those fields across. Maybe I want the chart of account as well. So this is linking out to the chart of account code, which I think is quite a useful extra piece of functionality there. Have a look at costs, carrier costs, things like this. So all of the fields are available within there, which is quite nice, receipt reference, etc. So I'll extract that, and now we've got invoice header information coming out there. So I think that gives you a good taste for how iPOS Excel can work for both import and export. It's a nice, clean piece of functionality, easy to use and easy to deploy as an Excel spreadsheet. And if you would like any more information on the tool, or if you'd like a more focused demonstration, we'd be happy to provide that to you. And please just feel free to contact us at the details you can see here. And thank you very much for your time and your interest in iPOS Excel.